And good morning, everyone. Happy Monday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. Hope you had a fantastic weekend. Boy, here in southern Oklahoma, we had some of the most beautiful, beautiful fall weather that you could possibly imagine. Now, coming into the office this morning, I want to tell you, we had fog as thick as I have ever seen it in southern Oklahoma. I had my headlights on dim, like you're always supposed to have in heavy fog. And unfortunately, the painted lines in the middle of the road were very, very dim. And there were times, and it's about 3.5, 4 miles from my house to my office. And there were times I was literally idling along, leaning forward, trying to see the lines in the middle of the road. There were no lines on the right-hand side. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I've seen fog like that lots of times in the Boston Mountains, south of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I've never seen fog that thick here in southern Oklahoma. It was literally amazing. Glad I made it. So anyway, glad to be with you today. Again, my name is Don K. Preston. This is Morning Musings. And we're examining the Olivet Discourse. We've been focused on the return of the absent master. Now look, I don't know of anybody that denies that the coming of the absent master is Acts chapter 1. I don't know of anyone actually that denies that the return of the Lord of Acts chapter 1 is the coming of the Son of Man. I mean, that's just basically a given in all of the literature. And so we've been focused on the discussion of the coming of the Son of Man, and we've been focused on determining whether or not Daniel chapter 7, 13 and 14, where Daniel said, I saw in a night vision one like unto the Son of Man, coming on the clouds of heaven, and he came before the Ancient of Days, and there was given unto him a kingdom. So most commentators, I say most, that may not be quite accurate, but many, many commentators believe that coming of the Son of Man in Daniel chapter 7 is Christ's ascension of Acts chapter 1. Now, do you see a problem here? On the one hand, commentators say Acts chapter 1 is the ascension fulfilling Daniel chapter 7. But then the promise of the angel is the promise of the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven. So you have the promise, you have Christ ascending, that's supposedly Daniel 7. Then you have the promise of his coming, that's supposedly the end of time. All in that tightly packed verse or two. Now, is that theoretically possible? Well, I suppose it is, but you have to show some evidence of it. You can't just say, oh, well, the ascension is Daniel 7, the return is the end of time. So, I've been examining the phraseology, the terminology of the coming of the Son of Man, and specifically, and not every text contains this language, but specifically the coming of the Son of Man on the clouds of heaven. Now, if you'll remember, and let me read this for you again. This is from Andreas Stutz in the book, A Handbook on the Jewish Roots of the Christian Faith, edited by Craig Evans, David Mishkin, Hendrickson Publishing, 2019, page 158. Quote, Jesus adapted the term, that is the Son of Man, in a very balanced way, 16 times relating to his earthly life, 27 times referring to his suffering, 26 times to his glorification. And he continues, while Jesus applied the term Son of Man from Daniel 7, 13 and 14 to the various states of his ministry, he applied the vision reported in Daniel 7, 13 and 14, along with Zechariah chapter 12 and verse 10, exclusively and unambiguously to his return, Matthew 24, 30, Matthew 26, 64, Luke 21, 26 and 27. This observation confirms that Jesus understood himself as the Danielic Son of Man, unquote. Now, I could not agree more with that citation. The citation itself does not prove that it's true, but it demonstrates that what I have been sharing with you, and that is that Daniel 7 is not the ascension, is not an aberrant view, it's not a new view, it's not a preterist view. It is a view that is held by academics. Now, we spent some time on Matthew 16, 27 and 28. I demonstrated to you in our last video that the grammar of Matthew 16, 27 and 28 absolutely demands that verse 27 was to be fulfilled in the lifetime of the first century generation. I pointed out to you that verse 28 begins with Amen, lego humin. You know, one rather caustic young man said, "You don't know anything about the Greek." Well, I don't claim to be a Greek expert by any means, don't claim to be a Greek scholar, but I can read the Greek grammars, I can read the lexicons, I can read the context, and I can determine that that little term is used 95 times in the New Testament and never, ever, ever breaks a subject. And therefore, it's incumbent upon anyone, including this arrogant young man, that they be able to demonstrate linguistically, grammatically, and contextually that Amen, lego humin is being used in a totally distinctive way. Now, are there exceptions to linguistic uses in the Bible? Oh, absolutely. You know, language is a living type of thing, and Koine Greek was a living language. So, writers and speakers can sometimes use language in distinctive, idiosyncratic ways. But those who are going to make the claim, oh, well, yeah, the normal use of Amen, lego humin is that it calls attention to what is about to be said to emphasize something that's already been said. Okay, yes, that's the normal use, not being used that way here. Well, then the burden of proof falls squarely on you. You can't just say, oh, well, it's different here. And that being true, ladies and gentlemen, let me reiterate the point. And by the way, I develop all of this and more too. I discuss whether or not Matthew 16, 27 and 28 was fulfilled in the Transfiguration, 7 days after Matthew 16, 27 and 28 were spoken. I discuss the fact that Matthew 16, 27 and 28 is the promise of Christ to come in the vindication of his own suffering and the suffering of his own apostles. I demonstrate that Matthew 16, 27 and 28 was not fulfilled on the day of Pentecost, only 6 months later. So go to my website, donkpreston.com, BibleProphecy.com, and get yourself a copy of the little book, Can You Believe Jesus Said This? I examine all of the efforts I've heard so far at least, in all of my years, to try to deflect the power of Matthew 16, 27 and 28, to prevent it from saying, really, I mean, that's what it amounts to. It is an effort for people to deny the meaning of the text. Listen to me. If people did not have a preconceived, like I did, a preconceived idea about what the coming of the Son of Man is, you know, an earth-burning, time-ending event when every human being who has ever lived comes out of the grave, if you didn't have that presuppositional idea, then no one would attempt to divide Matthew 16, 27 and 28 and insert 2,000 years into the period at the end of verse 27. Nobody. But because of preconceived ideas about the nature of the coming of the Son of Man, they say, well, everyone knows that Jesus didn't come on the clouds of heaven. He didn't come with the angels. He didn't judge every man. Because after all, who saw him? Well, he said he was going to do it. And let me remind you of the challenge of Christ. The challenge of Christ is found in John 10, 37. if I do not do the works which my Father has given me, do not believe me. And thus, ladies and gentlemen, in Matthew 27 and 28, Jesus was speaking of what he was going to do. And remember, in John 12, 47, 48, Jesus said, I can do nothing, I can say nothing except that which the Father has given me. So in Matthew 16, 27 and 28, we have Jesus telling us what he was going to do. He was going to come with the angels in judgment of every man, and he was going to do it before all of that audience standing there at that time died. If he did not do it, ladies and gentlemen, you know what? It really doesn't matter if you saw it or I saw it. Doesn't matter. What he said is what he was going to do when he said he was going to do it. And since he said that it was going to be done in direct connection with the vindication of the blood of the martyrs, Matthew 16, 21 and following, and since Jerusalem was destroyed for persecuting the followers of Christ and all of the prophets and what have you, then that proves beyond a shadow of a doubt. People say, well, nobody saw him come. Listen, Isaiah 26, and you've got to read this for yourself. Isaiah 26, 10 and following. And I'm just going to turn there. Look, I was actually going to talk on something else this morning, but this is so important. I want to turn over here. This is one of those passages, for some reason, that I've had difficulty memorizing verbatim. Isaiah 26, verse 10. Let grace be shown to the wicked, yet he will not learn righteousness. In the land of the upright, he will deal unjustly, and will not behold the majesty of the Lord. Lord, when your hand, now look, when your hand, the Lord's hand is his hand of justice, and it's his hand of righteousness. It's the hand that descended from heaven in judgment. Lord, when your hand is lifted up, they will not see, watch this, but they will see and be ashamed. Do you catch the power of that? When God's judgment would be in the earth, the righteous would see, know, and understand what it was. Now, what's the context of this judgment? Go back to chapter 25, 1 to 3. It's the judgment of Jerusalem and the temple. Lord, when your judgments are in the earth, the righteous see, understand, and they know and they learn. The wicked see the same thing and they just don't see anything. I don't see anything. What? But they will see, which means they would see when it's too late. Even John Calvin, commenting on this text, said that very thing. The wicked would not see and would not understand until it was too late. Now this tells us, now look, think about this, and I'm out of time. If the coming of the Son of Man is an earth-burning, time-ending event, when every dead person who has ever lived, decomposed, is raised out of the ground and reconstituted, you mean to tell me that the righteous would not understand what was going on when it took place? You see, when it says they will not see, they would not understand, they would not grasp, and they would not accept. But they would see when it was too late. And again, the context is the destruction of Jerusalem. I'm out of time. In the morning, on Tuesday, we're going to be talking about Matthew 24, 27 through 34, and the coming of the Son of Man, which is supposed to be the return of the absent master. Not only supposed to be, it is the return of the absent master. I'll see you on the flip side.